Ryan Rowan with Tyree. And tonight on the show for episode 48, we've got 2010 graduate Lance Penhale. So Lance was born and raised in Alaska. He comes to us. He's living in Alaska now. Self-proclaimed most successful Army surfing career in history. Shoots 180 in golf occasionally, and was recently recognized as the most successful 40 under 40 in Alaska. Did I get that right, Lance?
Yeah, I mean, that's close. For Alaska's Journal of Commerce and the Anchorage Daily News, our main media publications, I was selected to be a member of the top 40 young professionals under 40 years old in Alaska. So the publication will come out this next week, but I was selected about 2 months ago now.
There we go. Welcome to the show, Lance. Appreciate you coming on.
Cool. Excited to be here.
So what time is it in Alaska right now? I feel like it's probably got to be like 12 hours.
It's just after lunch, so I'm giving myself a little face slaps, trying to wake up, wrestling style. It is 2:18 p.m., so we're 4 hours removed from you all on the East Coast.
And the sun hasn't gone down since last October. Like, what's the deal up there with that? I don't even know.
Right now, I would argue that most would say the sun isn't going down because the twilight is so severe. You're really not going to have darkness at any point during the day. But there is a point called Circle, which is for the Arctic Circle, that if you drive up about 3 hours north of Fairbanks, if you want to look that up on Google, see how far that is, that puts you in the Arctic Circle where literally the sun does not go down for multiple months in the summertime. So down here in Anchorage, we get some twilight and it gets a little dim, but it doesn't get dark, no.
Look at that. Learn something new every day.
I was doing a little bit of research coming into this. I know for as long as I've known Lance, I know nothing about Alaska, other than the pictures that you post routinely. But I was like, wait, how far is this high school from Anchorage, from where he's at now? How far is that from Fairbanks? Dude, it's like an 8-hour drive from Fairbanks.
Yeah, dude, Alaska, it really is. It is probably 3 times the size of Texas, if not bigger. And then it's a third of the entire continental United States. Before coming back home to Alaska to work in business, I'd actually only been to Fairbanks a couple times. One time to the Tan Knot Invitational, probably the most memorable time, which is the unofficial Alaska State Middle School State Championship. But other than that, I've probably been to Fairbanks 3-4 times because it is so far from where I grew up. But it's pretty big.
So we'll start there, based on your Alaskan upbringing. Growing up about 3 hours from Anchorage, what is it like? Like you live right along the or you grew up right around the Gompertz Canal? Is that what it was? Is that
No, I read that and I was like, did he make that up? Is that a joke? But no, I saw it. You're factually correct. Technically, it is the Gompertz Channel. We refer to it as the Cook Inlet. So I grew up on the Kenai Peninsula, which if you drove, as the crow flies from Anchorage is probably 45 minutes or less. But you have to wind through the mountains and then up around the inlet. So it takes about 3 hours. It's out there. It's right on the Cook Inlet, so that's where the Gompertz Channel would be. And I think interesting, the Cook Inlet is named that because Captain Cook discovered it. And then the north part of the inlet is the Turnagain Arm. And as he was exploring through there, every time he would take another turn down a bay or inlet, he would have to turn again because it was one gigantic inlet. So I live on the Cook Inlet, or grew up on the Cook Inlet, and that's right next to the Turnagain Arm. So,
how rural is it out there? Like when I think of like outside of the city, I'm thinking, there's moose in your backyard and you can't go to work, just because that's happened to my sister before when they were up in Fairbanks. But
no, I appreciate it. I would say being born and raised in Alaska, if I saw a moose, I would tactically maneuver around the moose and it wouldn't prevent me from doing anything because it's normal. So it's that rural, but we're on the road system. So we could define how rural we are by being connected to the Alaska road system. So I could get to Kenai pretty quickly. Nikiski is North Kenai, and I almost thought we were the Cinderella child of the Kenai Peninsula, because we're the small school that no one ever gets to, because the Kenai River is super famous for king salmon fishing. I think the largest king salmon caught on a sports pole was caught on the Kenai River. So no one ever drives past Kenai, but if you drive past Kenai, you get to Nikiski, and that's where I grew up. It's right on the beach along the coast. There's a lot of natural gas work done there, refining, and a lot of oil work. And it's just a small town vibe. It's dirt roads, and there's a country song that talks about where you come from, and this is called Rednecker Than You Are. And I always when I heard that song, I was like, oh, that represents Nikiski. People don't know there's country folk where I'm from. It's just a little different brand. So I'd say it's really rural, but we're on the road system. So we got a Walmart a couple of years ago. We got that.
There we go.
Now, being that far out, I guess, kind of get into the wrestling side of Atlanta. So not only, how you got into it, but then just what is the wrestling community like up there? What's the culture like? I mean, obviously you've got these small communities dotted throughout Alaska, and then obviously the bigger towns, like Fairbanks, but how does, just, I don't know, explain that.
Yeah, the wrestling community in Alaska, I think it's tight knit. Coming from Alaska, I was biased that, there's good wrestlers from everywhere. Having wrestled on the East Coast for 6 years now, a decade ago. But I realized there's some depth in those states, and that's why you get really tough people. I was lucky that we had a core group of people competing all around the same time that were tough and pushed each other. And I read a book a couple years ago about by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, that talks about compounding opportunity. And I really reflected on my mentors and coaches giving me that next opportunity, driving me to tournaments when my parents were working, traveling with me, letting me stay at their houses because I'd have to go to Fairbanks 8 hours away to participate in Team Alaska camp. So we got a tight knit group that really celebrates everyone in wrestling. And I'll explain that in a second, but if you want to be a part of the sport and you're tough, or you want to be tough, man, we celebrate that up here in Alaska because it's borderline mandatory just to live here. And I'll say, when I talk about inclusion, being from Nikiski, Alaska, we actually had a pretty solid legacy before I came on board. We had multiple state championships coming out of a small school. And a girl, Taylor O'Donnell, she moved from Homer, Alaska, about 2 hours away, came to my school to train. She ended up making the first women's Olympic team in 2006. So I've been around elite athletes. It just didn't feel that way. It's just the people I knew, and just so happens we got a girl wrestling to compete in the Olympics. So I grew up around people that were successful, but it was definitely isolated.
What drew you to the sport?
So the McCoy family, Jordan McCoy, Travis McCoy, Chris McCoy, growing up, I think it's special that I had the same group of kids that went to the same elementary school. And at about 9 years old, my friends had just been wrestling and I wanted to hang out with them. So I went to the North Road Wrestling Club, and I started getting into freestyle wrestling. And I really fell in love with it. Saw a lot of success with the North Road Wrestling Club Panthers, and I got the best first year wrestler, even though I was second out of 2 in the state championship.
So when did you start wrestling? How old were you?
I was 9, and I was 55 pounds, so pretty light for how old I was.
Yeah.
What did you weigh when you were 9 years old? What is that?
Oh, probably like $120. I'm sure.
Really?
I was a fat, chubby kid when I was.
What grade are you when you're 9? You're 4th grade?
What?
You're like 3rd or 4th grade when you're 9?
Yeah, it's like 3rd.
4th, I think.
I think
Yeah, my son's 7, and he's going into 2nd. What's that, B-Row?
I think I was like 70 or 75 pounds.
Yeah. Probably 100.
I mean, so if you just do percentage base, I was only a third smaller than most of the folks.
And you were half the size of Ty, or less.
Smaller than all the girls too.
So did like many like kids go to Fargo back then? I guess what is Alaska like? What's the wrestling there like now? Has it grown a lot? I guess
I'm still getting a feel for that. You know, I like that question because we did have a solid group when I was growing up, and I'm sure it's the same now. We've had some tough kids wrestle Division I, you know, after I left Alaska, but it's like 1 or 2 kids every other year make Division I, or not even. I'm not even sure. But we had a good example of that is Dallas CV. He's my age. He won the Fargo in Greco when we were, and then Eli Hutchinson's a multiple time runner up. I wrestle with those guys every day. So we're going to Fargo and competing in the finals, and here Dallas won it. And the reason I say that is he quit wrestling his senior year. And he didn't.
I've never heard the name before.
Yeah, he won Fargo, and then he actually wanted to be the youngest or the first and only person to do the junior Iditarod and the real Iditarod. It's a dog sled race from Anchorage to Nome, 2,000 miles plus. With just dogs. He wanted to do that, and it just so happened his dad runs it and has won it, and his birthday was in between the time frame. So he was 17, could run the junior Iditarod. He turned 18, he turned right around, and he ran the real Iditarod the next week or something. And so he instead of pursuing a wrestling career, he actually chose to go into dog racing. So we had a good core group in Team Alaska. And I think where I really got some good exposure was when the Iowa Hawkeyes came to Skyview High School, about 45 minutes from where I grew up. And they hosted an intensive camp, and they were just down there to salmon fish and enjoy the summer. And I got to meet Mike Zadek. I got to meet a bunch of those guys the same year they were on Hawkeye, the ESPN The Season, and they were runner up or national champ, I forget, but I got to meet almost all the whole team and spend almost 2 weeks wrestling with them every day for 6 hours or something. That same year they were on ESPN. So I had people to look at and people to try to be like, but it's not like today where you could watch YouTube and just see the world's best teaching you technique all the time. Kind of had to take it where you could get it. My last part for Alaska wrestling being legit is Austin Vanderford. I just found about him. He's married to Paige Van Zant. And he's undefeated in Bellator right now. I remember beating that kid up. Right? I remember beating Cale Byers up. He's an All-American in 197 for George Mason. I can't remember if he transferred, but we got some tough guys. I'd like to see Austin get a belt for Alaska because we got tough people. Just like you look at Hawaii, I'd lived there for a while, for a couple of years after the Army, and how does a small community consistently produce world champ fighters? And it's because they've got a tough culture, right? And I think we've got that up here in Alaska, but we just have got a lot of recreation. People love to do their thing, so they don't leave.
Exact opposite of PA.
Yeah, they want to wrestle their way
nothing
out.
else to do but wrestle, right? Right, be wrong.
You can go to Liberty Bell. There's some sites, a lot of history.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's real great. Yeah.
You check that meat packing shop where Rocky was hitting that that big cow thing. What do you call that?
Just a big package of meat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess how often did you like go to the continental US like growing up? Like when I think about your transition to West Point and to the prep school, I think, we've talked to some people from the Midwest. I'm like, man, it's got to be a lot to travel out there. The culture's a lot different. I feel like it's got to be compounded for you. Because how much exposure did you have to like, I guess, regular continental US people, if that's like a stereotype?
Regular
before going to prep school, like, going back there.
Well, firstly, we call it the lower 48. We just group you guys together in the lower 48, right? You're all like, but no, I'm blessed, man, because my dad moved up here in May 1968 after being a 3-tour Vietnam veteran. It was obviously different conditions when he came back, and he's tired of living in Northern California where he's from. And he moved up to Alaska because there was opportunities to work, and he was able to live freely. My grandfather was the first naturalist for the California State Park System, and which is the first state park system in history. So I like to think that after Vietnam, my dad just moved up here to live that way. And he did it for a long time, had a family a little bit older, married my mom from the Philippines, and most of my family that lives in the United States live in New York City. And so it's ironic, as far away from home as I went to go to West Point, it's actually the closest place I could have been to be near family. And that wasn't really a consideration. That was a blessing. So I had I mean, every other year, a couple of years, I'd get to go travel and see family and get this perspective that isn't as isolated as some of the folks that don't have that broad background. So I'm really blessed for my parents choosing Alaska to raise me, but having a worldwide perspective. So I'm lucky for that. But when it comes to traveling for wrestling, it's very little. I didn't grow up with like ton of money to be spent on wrestling. To be honest, I started wrestling because you outgrow hockey gear pretty quickly, and we'd have to drive too far to go to hockey, and I broke my leg, so I stopped playing hockey that year, and then I started wrestling the next year, and it's a lot cheaper to buy wrestling shoes than hockey gear. So
Yeah.
I actually had to raise money to attend wrestling camps and then travel. And I remember going door to door to businesses as a 100-pound kid, knocking on the door and saying, "This is what I've done in Alaska in wrestling, and I want to go and represent us on Team Alaska at the Western Regional competition in Montana." And people coming out of pocket to support one of their own. And I got that was a big deal when I was a kid, but I was just like, man, I got to get this opportunity. And I was really focused. I didn't reflect on how special that is, that my community allowed me the opportunities that I've had, and it's compounded from there. So
That's awesome. So so just sticking on wrestling, and so you grow up with a tight knit community, a bunch of tough kids, and then so you get to high school, and what I think of the notes here, three time state champ. Is that a rarity? Is that a tough thing to come by in Alaska, or?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number of state champs that have hit those marks. There's definitely been quite a few three-timers. I remember Eli Hutchinson he lost at the Reno Tournament Champions. Like, he lost one high school match, but in Alaska, he never lost one. He was a four-timer, and I think he's only the second or third. So we've had a couple of four-timers, probably 15 or so three-timers. I'm not exactly sure, but
Still a small number. I know.
Yeah, still, that's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
it's still not a lot of people, no.
Yeah.
Is there only one
So-
class in Alaska? Like, is there only or how's that, I guess, work?
There's two classes, and I think they still do it like this today. I was actually the small school state champ, but I'll say that I did beat the big school state champs too. And say Alan Bartelli, who wrestled for Boise, he actually qualified for the NCAA tournament, which I didn't. I beat him 8-0 when we were wrestling, and he was the big school champ. So
We're gonna put an asterisk next to him saying,
we end up crossing. I wish they did one state championship, to be honest, now, but if that was the case, you could make an argument I wouldn't have won my sophomore year, and I'd be a two-timer. But Austin Vanderford, undefeated Bellator, he's a two-timer. I should have done UFC. Just kidding. Zero interest, man. Zero interest in that.
So, Lance, talk to us. So three-time. When did you start getting looks? So I'm an 05 grad. I'm from Florida, and the only reason I got recruited is because even from Florida, from the lower 48, I was sending out video and hopefully get some letters in the mail. So I can imagine. But I'd love to hear from you on what that process was like for you. How did you start getting looks? How did you get in touch with the Army? That whole thing.
You know how it goes. You think you're tough, and then you get crickets. D1 wrestling is the most selective sport out of high school, out of any college program. Yeah. That's the stat I remember, and I don't think a lot of people know that about the sport. So I was I was pretty confident. I'll take it to a story where I was working at a fish cannery. I'll leave the details for another time, but I was working at a fish cannery when I was 16, and I spent all the money I'd made that summer. I'm talking working 18 hours a day in some grimy conditions to build a computer. And my dad, this speaks to the toughness, he goes, "That's awesome. How are you going to pay for college?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to go for free." And I didn't really speak to my dad too much. And turns out no one will pay you to redshirt. And I found out about the prep school. I did a rubric to try to figure out, oh, well, they sent me a letter. And so it was kind of, I found out, we send a lot of letters out, see who we're going to get hit. Obviously, you've got to be at an elite level to be getting those letters, but they reached out to me. It had Chuck Barbie's signature on it, and they were listening. So I had a couple phone calls, and they were interested in having me come there, and particularly to go to the prep school and get that redshirt year. And I made a decision that I would go, and if it wasn't for me, I could make another decision. So it was an opportunity that I had, and I really didn't want to have student debt, because I saw how that affected other people that I knew. And I thought I would make the sacrifices now for the long term. And I honestly created a rubric where I put fun as a category, and I was trying to make West Point lose, and I couldn't. I really couldn't. So I had to go. And I'll tell you,
Who else was on that list?
I had Stanford on there. I had Boise State. I had University of Oregon. And then I had some NAIA schools and some other schools that had sent me letters. But most of them, Stanford sent me a letter. And then I was like, yeah, I'm interested in coming. And they said, retake the SATs. Which I ended up doing at prep school, and I would have got in there. I'm glad I didn't go. They tried to cancel their program. Yeah. So I would never do it another way. I can't say that I liked West Point the whole time. In fact, I'm probably one of the guys that was a little sadder. Brian was my roommate at one point. And so he saw it. He saw some of the challenges that we had, but man, I don't think there's many institutions as special or that create as strong a character as West Point does. And to be a little bit better at wrestling, I wouldn't do it. You got Matt Kyler, my classmate, making All-American. You had Phil Simpson making the finals. I think you absolutely could do it at West Point, but you get a lot more. So that's how it happened. I didn't have any other choice.
Gotcha.
So kind of looking into your recruiting a little bit too. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. They can't come to visit you. Did they reach out and give you the love? You mentioned a couple phone calls, but it's obviously going to be a little different. Chuck drives down 2 hours to go see me, but he's got to it's a lot of travel. I mean, how did the recruiting go from that piece? And when did you commit to go to the prep school?
So, thinking about Maldonado, Coach Maldonado, I actually hadn't thought of his name in a while. He was instrumental in it. The assistant coaches, they're the ones that really develop that tight bond with the recruits and with the athletes on the team a little bit more personally. And so those assistant coaches are critical. Maldonado, he had a couple phone calls with me, and I ultimately visited the campus. And it's a funny story. They had a nor'easter that weekend, and my thoughts were, this is colder right now than it's been the entire year where I grew up in Alaska. It was my first impression of West Point.
What year was that?
Oh man, it was 2005. It would have been your senior year.
Oh God. Who'd you stay with? You remember who you recruit?
Man, I stayed with Frankie Bond, and to be quite honest, that's who I want to hear from. I want to know what Frankie Bond's doing. The Bulldog.
What is he? What is he doing?
He's slapping cradles on people, man. He's doing that. But I stayed with him, and I think that experience, and I don't think there's a senior ever on Army wrestling team that wouldn't take great care of a recruit when they got there. And man, Frankie Bond showed me the truth about what it means to be an Army wrestler. And it was awesome. I had a great experience. I stayed in the barracks. I got to hang out with the team. And obviously I met Utah, I met Featherstone. I think it was even who was there at the time? Sammy Henson. I think Sammy Henson was on his way out. But I'm like, man, that's the world runner-up, like on the team. This is where I want to be.
He was probably too busy beating up our 25 and 33 pounders in the corner to come visit you.
Just breaking stuff is what I heard. Throwing blocks across the room.
God dang, that guy.
I heard a story one time that he was getting beat up by like Pat Simpson, and he was getting so frustrated. He's wrestling guys 25 pounds bigger than him, and he's getting pissed.
He's a
and then
psychopath,
he took a timing clock and he rips it out of the wall that was still plugged in. I heard there was like a big electric like spark from the wall outlet like across the room when he threw it. But yeah, I visited 2005, and I really burned all the ships, man. I was coming to West Point because I had the prep school bid, and I figured, let's try it out. I got on the bus that first day, and I went off to cadet candidate basic training, and my first thought was, well, I've went too far. I can't quit. So
how big were you? I guess, what did you wrestle your senior year? And then like, what did you weigh kind of at prep school? I remember you being like a little undersized early on, and then you kind of grew into a full size 25.
And that may be debatable. I mean, I was probably walking around 142, 145 as a senior, and I'm not sure that's big enough. I mean, it's right there. I could have got stronger. I should have focused on getting stronger and then still been 25. But I came in weighing 120. I wrestled 112 as a senior, and that was a conscious choice because I knew the lowest weight was 125. I wrestled 103 through junior year, and then I was weighing 114 as a senior. So I had this pattern of growing 8 pounds a year. Can't control that too much. But I came in at 120 pounds, and that just reminded me of a quick story I'll say about how important good coaches are. I remember walking by my coach's office as a sophomore, and I weighed 75 pounds as a freshman. I was almost too light to be legally allowed to wrestle. I'm like a normal size now, folks. So, depends on what country you're in. But I was 75 pounds, and the next year, I'm gaining weight. I think I wrestled 84 at the end of that year as a cadet, and then I wrestled 91. And I remember walking by my coach's office, and he was talking to someone else. He said, if that kid weighs 95 pounds next year, he'll win the state title. And I weighed myself and wrote my weight on the back of my medal. I weighed 92.6 pounds that sophomore year. But anyway, to college, man, it was tough. I hadn't lost a match for 2.5 years. And not even close. Like I didn't even get scored on as a senior or as a junior. I had one overtime match, was kind of shocking as a senior, but I hadn't really been close to losing for a while. And then I went to the prep school with only the prep school students, not even the real West Point team. And I was 3rd out of 3 to an Ohio State runner-up and a 6th place PA guy. And I could not get off bottom. And you talk about being maturity. The first match I had at prep school, and Ty, you may remember this, was against a D3 All-American, and I think he was a runner-up. And the dude had full-on chest hair, looked like he was freaking 35 years old.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and I still feel like a 12-pounder. So I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, man, this guy's way bigger than me. And this guy's freaking 10 years older than me. This is a man. He probably has kids. Yeah. Right. And,
some JUCO.
And then I took him to a 1-point match, and I thought, well, I could still be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough making that transition. I was light. I probably didn't really fill in until junior year.
Yeah.
So.
No, I don't know if I can say that I remember that whole match, but I definitely remember you guys, and I definitely remember your toughness for sure. And for the listeners, after I graduated in 05, and I was a AI at the prep school myself, and then after me was TJ Tapley. So we had the distinct privilege of having Lance on the team, which was always fun.
Well, I appreciate that, because I actually got to have the privilege later of coaching the prep school team, and I think that's probably the pinnacle of my wrestling career, is actually being the prep school coach. That was a joy, and I was actually looking forward to being on here with you to just thank you, if I haven't already, for taking care of us. talking about cadet candidate basic training and the culture shock, being away from home, being a prep school coach, I had a 3-time New York State champ that he just couldn't make it mentally. And I mean, I had so many conversations with him about grit and about toughness. And this guy's like a world-class bodybuilder now. And man, I've seen that guy cry quite a bit. And I'm sure, Ty, you saw it too. I'm sure you saw a lot of it. You're with people in some pretty vulnerable times. So
Yeah.
that was fun.
This
Yeah,
is a good time for our first listener question. So this is an anonymous listener question. I will not say who asked this, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how badass was your USMAPS coach, and why is he the best prep school coach ever?
So
That's out of nowhere.
that's out of no. Who could ask that one? I mean,
Wow.
TJ Templey, if we're talking about him. TJ was awesome. You know, he came in the second half of the year, but really when you got to be on your game is when the cadet candidates first arrive, and that was Ty. And he was awesome. I think that there's a style of leadership that you get in wrestling, from wrestling. And this is one of my favorite quotes. And as a small person, it's important. It's wrestling is a sport that has turned many boys into men and many men into leaders. And it's a sport you can be a giant regardless of how big you are. And Ty really, really showed us that what we were doing there at the prep school was about building us into the best versions of ourselves, and that we could get through all the challenges that we're facing. And he's like, I did it. And the leadership I'm talking about is, it wasn't from a position of authority, which a lot of times in the military, you'll see authoritative leadership as the predominant style, when instead influence and inspiration goes a lot further. And to have an officer, commissioned officer, come in there coaching us that it's been all the places we want to be, talk to us like people, and is gonna foster our respect. We're gonna respect that. And he didn't have to lead by, you call me coach or whatever. He provided us some emotional support in a lot of different challenges that weren't directly wrestling related. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. So
I appreciate that. Thanks for those kind words, Lance.
I wouldn't say them if I didn't mean.
Yeah.
For the listeners out there, this was not scripted either. This is
No.
very touching moment right now for the podcast.
Yeah.
That's what I was
have to
really
say, one of the
looking
most
forward
touching moments on BHAW.
to. A lot of touching moments in wrestling, though.
So I'm going to fast forward a couple of years. And I'm not sure if they're still doing things like this, but we did a PIAD together at the Olympic Training Center in 2008. Looking back, I wish I would have taken taken it a little bit more serious, because when I look back, I'm like, wow, this was right before the Olympics. You have Henry Cejudo there. You've got Bill Zadek. Like, these guys are training hard. Talk about that experience, from your perspective. We had a wild adventure trying to go to Pikes Peak. I was unsuccessful in it. You were successful in it. But talk about that a little bit, because I don't know if maybe a lot of our listeners are more recent grads. I don't think they've done that in a while. So talk about that experience a little bit.
No, I'm excited you mentioned the Pikes Peak thing, because I was certainly going to bring it up. That's an incredibly memorable experience. Am I breaking up here on the chat? Can you guys hear me?
Breaking up. Your voice your lips are not matched up exactly with the words, but I'm not hearing it break up.
It's a little lag.
But it's coming in smooth, Lance.
Okay, cool. I don't want to be too distracting, but that was an awesome experience. Coach Barbie was really good to send us out there, and we sent a really good group. I believe it was Casey Tom, Rudy Chalednik, me, and you. Mm-hmm. I think that was it. And we got to bunk at the Olympic Training Center. And it was a nice time to build some camaraderie with teammates. It's a shame if they're not still doing that, because we got the WCAP program to get integrated into. And being around that level was inspirational in itself. But because it was an Olympic year, I do have a regret. It's my second biggest wrestling regret. I know you got to wrestle with Frazier, man. That tan, his tan Perfect.
Oh, I love telling
Talking
this
about-
story.
Oh my God,
Man, that's
such
a
a,
good story.
it's perfect. But Brian was wrestling with him, and I got this guy he beat up a couple of my buddies over the years, but I never had a chance to wrestle him. His name's Henry Cejudo, and he's training for the Olympics, which he ultimately wins that year. And I never go a single round with him. And it's because he's sizing people up, wanting them to want to practice with him. And I'm thinking, well, you're just some other guy that's a little bit ahead of me. I didn't know he's going to pull off the miracle run and win the Olympics that year. Despite the triple champ status, they'll tell you that he didn't have an easy road to get there. But I never wrestled with him. I think back, I could say I practiced the year Henry Cejudo won the Olympics. I was in the practice room working out with him. And I don't get to say that because I was honestly probably a little scared of getting smoked. And I took Sean Bunch down while I was there. That was pretty cool. I took him down a couple of times, and he's a weight class up for me. I bet you I could have got one on Henry. And now I never get again. I was thinking about sending him a message and saying, hey, I regret never wrestling with you. You want to roll now just for old time?
So I'm gonna take a little highlight of this clip, and we're gonna tag him in it.
Good. Hey, you know what? Just an exhibition. He's doing those exhibitions these days. And then we can play golf right after. I'll beat him. For the record, Christian Snook's going to call me out here, another Army wrestling alum. He's actually good at golf. I've only broke 70 for real, or broke 80 for real once. But I've done it 3 times on temporary green. So
does Christian break 80 like routinely?
Oh, Christian's like scratch. Christian
Really?
tried to be on the Army golf team, and they should have let him. Christian is probably one of the most naturally talented athletes I know, and you wouldn't know from talking to him.
No, looking at him.
The way he wrestles off his back all the time. So
I'll tell this little story. This is a sidebar. This is about me, but this will probably never get told otherwise because we're at the Colorado camp, and I'm wrestling. What was his name again? He was the
man, Frayer.
Yeah,
Jared
Jared Frayer.
Well, we're going, and so I took the opposite approach. I got there and I was like, "Ooh, this is Olympian. Like, hey, you want to drill?" And we're drilling, and then they're about to go live, and Terry Brands like comes over to him and like pulls him off of me, pulls him off of me, and he's like, and Freyer's like, "Hey, no, I'll go with him. He feels strong."
Yeah, I remember that story. I should have known that was to set that up.
And then, and so I wrestled. So there's this Pennsylvania little tournament called BHAW that some of our listeners may know. But I wrestled in it while I was in college, the spring prior to that. And I whispered over to Rudy when he said that. I was like, I think he heard about my BHAWs this year. It's still a joke to this day. Me and Rudy still joke about that.
He probably heard about BHAWs, and you are strong. And that's awesome. You took that approach, and some immaturity now in the things that I do and what I'm just focused on in life now. I consistently challenge myself with things that I'm uncomfortable with. And I think that's awesome. It's fun. I'm overcoming fear. And I did not do that there. So honestly, years later, that Olympic training center trip stands out in my mind from a wrestling perspective because I had an opportunity that I didn't take. And years later, I wish I did. And the other side of that is the Pikes Peak story. I don't know how much time we have to get into all of it, but Rudy and we got pretty close that night. We started hiking a 14er at like 9 p.m. because we went the wrong way and already went on 15 miles of hiking. And Brian and Casey, they turned back, and Rudy and I said, we came this far, so we're starting it. It's a 14-mile hike from the start of the trailhead at 9 p.m. Rudy and I had to build a makeshift fire and almost froze to death. And then we made it the next day, and Rudy was like taking 5 steps and having to take his seat because of all we had was like Twizzlers and 1 bottle of water.
we didn't plan to do any, like we kind of planned to do it, we went to a Goodwill store and got clothes like for the day. And then we got lost going up. And then like right as it was starting to get dark out, me and Casey, and I was all chafed because we were wearing like shorts, like pink shorts and like little tank tops. And it started to get cold. And me and Casey were like, dude, we're going back. I don't even know if we walked back. We may have got a ride from somebody or done something. I can't remember how we got back, but man, I can't believe you guys did that.
We made it though. We made it. So
So Lance, let's circle back to wrestling and the current state of the program.
yeah.
I don't know how close you follow the program. Now that you're crushing it in the financial sector, but because you mentioned something. It's a shame that if they aren't going to the OTC, then they should be. But I think in my opinion, Ward's got it on a pretty good trajectory. Just wonder what your take is on it.
Well, and I'll say that I'm not challenging anything that the coaches do.
I'm not saying you are.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, and nor do I have the position to actually critique. I've become a much bigger wrestling fan, largely thanks to Brian over the last couple of years, and I consistently watch wrestling. YouTube has really changed the game and Flow Wrestling for us to be able to watch matches. I remember having the New York State tournament recorded on satellite TV and just watching that thing over and over again because you couldn't watch wrestling anywhere else. But I think the program is headed in an incredible direction, regardless of the results. Beating Navy all those years in a row. It's really the energy that Kevin has brought into the team. I golf with him. He's engaged with alumni. I donate to the wrestling club. He made it a regional training center, and he's actually marketing what West Point can do for people over the course of their lifetime. And this brotherhood we have here, these conversations is it. That's what you spend the rest of your life with. And I think the program is headed in an incredible direction, and we're bringing in really good assistant coaches. And I think the best years are ahead of us as a team. I think they're going to be getting in the top 15, top 10. That's where I think we're headed.
Yeah.
So power to Kevin. He's exactly what our program needed.
Yeah. Speaking of assistant coaches, this is the first episode, right, BHAW, since the announcement came out about Delvecchio?
Yeah. So I guess if you're listening to this, you probably already know the news. But yeah, Jesse Delvecchio, NCAA runner-up this year in 157, was announced as the volunteer assistant. So he'll be starting on August 1st of this year. So it'd be awesome to have someone with that accolades. I think as I was talking to Kevin, kind of as he was leading up to it, my first thought was like, wow, we've got Marcus at 157, we've got Ben Bazook at 174. Delvecchio, he was a big 57. He was at 65 before. Like he can wrestle with both those guys. Like both those guys are right on the doorstep of being All-Americans. In Marcus' case, being All-American again, like actually getting on the podium at NCAA's. So I think just it's huge because if that guy comes in and gets two people on the podium, that changes the program. That brings in more recruits, that gets a lot more awareness out. It gets us probably a top 20 finish at NCAA's, which we haven't done in a long time. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but yeah.
No, I love it, man. I think that was the question you were asking is where's the program headed? And I'm glad I didn't have to say his name, Delvecchio. I'm not from the East Coast, man. But yeah, that's awesome. And I'm a little biased. I like watching lightweight wrestling and getting a lightweight coach in there. And then Hunter Wood was on the last episode. I coached him when he was at prep school. And then look at this, I'm here and Ty was my coach. It's a legacy. That's what you want to build. And when you do that, I don't want to go into full business philosophy, but there's a book that talks about the last stage of any organization is alumni affiliation, and to have people that volunteer to be part of an organization and it's not paid, they really don't have anything to gain out of it. They only have stuff to give. I think, Brian, you represent that. Ty, you represent that. And that is an indicator that Army wrestling is going places.
That's a great point, man. Yeah, absolutely.
I would totally agree with that. So I guess moving into, you graduate, you branch ADA, you post overseas to Japan, and then you transition out to Hawaii. What stands out to me is that you must just hate the continental U.S. But talk a little about, I would say that in jest, but talk to us a little bit about, posting ADA. Why'd you choose that? Why'd you post, to Okinawa is where you posted.
Can you say badass or kid Joe? Okay, I'll just say it. You can't spell badass without ADA. That's primarily why. But why I branched it, I think, I should have listened to Ty a little bit. He was putting in my ear, you want to go armor, and actually kept in touch throughout our cadet career, even though he was in the Army. I think that's special too. I remember seeing you at the Firsty Club one time when you were down there for the branch thing. No, you were mentoring. It was,
yeah, sure.
It was a good night. But they, my dad came from a time, he just served a short period. He didn't really talk a ton about it. So I didn't know a ton about the military growing up. And I get to West Point and you're getting told you got to do 20 years. And I see the investment. I felt the passion of what the purpose of the academy is and what our real calling is to be leaders in our communities across the country. And man, it's pretty special to get invited to be part of that. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought for a second. Why did I go ADA? Because I wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to give it a shot to go 20 years. I studied computer science. I think there's a lot of people that think they know exactly where they're going. And I, because of wrestling, just believe in working hard and keeping your head up and having a vision for where you want to be and then rolling with the punches. And I went ADA because it branches into Space Command. Now, obviously, there is a Space Force. It seems pretty nerdy, but it's a pretty solid application of computer science to hit another missile with a missile. And most people aren't going to be able to relate to that. And I think there's something, what I learned in computer science classes at West Point is there's some kids way smarter than me. And they're special and we need them. But there's a skill set that I have when it comes to communicating between the engineer and the whatever leaders we're trying to relate to that I had, and I realized I was going to do that. So I went air defense artillery, was going to go into Space Force, but ultimately living in Alaska and growing up here in the same town my entire life, I don't have a family yet, but I hope to someday. I just couldn't see myself moving around the country and staying in the Army for me personally. I think what I do now in business, I actually serve the military more effectively and more authentic to myself. So I think I've found a calling where I still get to serve. But I went ADA because I wanted to give it a shot at doing a 20-year career. And ultimately that wasn't what I was meant to do. I spent some time in the reserves. I think that there's folks in the military that do want a little more autonomy that could benefit from learning about the reserves and the National Guard and the opportunities that they have that I really wasn't told about. So I served in the reserves and I would honestly continue to do that if my business obligations weren't what they are. So I love the Army and I really love the Academy and what we do. Unfortunately, I'm serving in a different way, but I could guarantee you if it came down to it, and the aliens come, I'll say that's where the conflict, they bring their UFOs and we're going full scale Independence Day. I will be there. I'll be flying the plane right up the gut. So, I'm back. So I hope that answers the question. But actually, when it comes to when it comes to advice for cadets, I did the exact opposite of what you should do. So actually take the advice from people who went before you. Don't pick your post, pick your branch, because there is branch culture. And if you like a mentor and you like the culture that he's talking about or the vibe he or she, probably take that advice for real. Because I had an interesting leadership experience being the ADA in a brand new unit in Okinawa, Japan for 4 of my 5.5 active duty years. And I really did it so I could have the best surfing career that the Army's seen. So I got to go to Okinawa. I got to live on the Jersey Shore. The only stint I didn't get to surf was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I skateboarded a lot. Fun fact, you know what I remember about John Anderson? John Anderson, incredible Army wrestler, Pan American champion. I remember him doing a 360 flip outside of Arvin Gym on his skateboard as a cadet, and I was like, dang, that guy's cool. I want to be him. So that's it, man. I went ADA because can't spell badass without it.
Yeah, no regrets about going ADA and not listening. It's a good thing you didn't listen to me because I branched Army out of school, but ended up changing over to infantry. So
I will say that though, I think Army wrestling, you get a mindset, and this tie may hit home a little bit. When I was in Okinawa, Japan, we have a really important mission. When I was in Hawaii, we actually had the ballistic missile warning that went off on everyone's cell phones. That was a complete false alarm. No one takes the ADA seriously until you need to. But with that said, man, we got some buddies, you know, I don't know if we want to talk specific names, but we got some teammates that have been hurt. My roommate lost his leg. And my thought was, I'm sitting here in Okinawa, Japan, living it up, and I got a chain of command that's pushing, you know, work really hard. But I'm thinking I need to really enjoy my time here for them. And then my thoughts were I could be there and doing a little more. And so consider those things, because no matter how you feel as a cadet right now, you don't know what you don't know. So that's my piece on that. I think I could have served a little differently. And I might still be in the Army today if I did go infantry or if I did go aviation.
Yeah.
So
you never know. I think I think you did all right, Lance. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what would you say, you know, to, I don't know, maybe any of the kids in Alaska right now thinking of listening that might be all the, as Kevin likes to say, the dozens of listeners, maybe one of them's in Alaska. What would you say to them right now if they were thinking about going to Army and they're considering the same path you took?
I would say do it. Of course, everyone likes a little bit of confirmation bias when people do the things that you did. A lot of people are just looking for that. I think you should do what you want to do, but go and understand the long-term implications of the actions that you take, and choosing to go to West Point is a really good one. And I'm passionate about this because I'm from Nikiski, Alaska. I did not know what a financial advisor is. I now run 3 offices and have 20 employees. I did not know what a financial advisor is. And I think West Point, I think the Army, and especially wrestling are great equalizers in our society. And I was a little biased. I thought you could wrestle through anything and get to everywhere you want to go. And I realized you got to surround yourself with people that support you and give you that next opportunity. And West Point's going to give you not just one opportunity, it's going to give you a ton. And then it's going to give you compounding opportunity if you wrestle hard in those positions. And I'm talking about being a platoon leader. I'm talking about being an XO. I'm talking about being a student. If you wrestle hard in those positions, man, the world opens up to you and you could come from anywhere and do anything you want. That's why I'm so passionate about Army wrestling. So.
It's awesome.
I'm about to start hand fighting in this hotel room.
Start knocking out some push-ups. We're going to Mawas. We're going to
Run it back.
So actually, I'll tell that Brian now. Brian wants to wrestle in Midlands. I think we take a poll at some point and say, and I'd throw some money at it. I don't think Brian should have to pay. Yeah. I think we should come together as a team and put Brian Rowan back in Midlands next year.
Oh, it's happening. Oh, Dave Cloninger, one of our avid listeners, he threw it out when we first started introducing it to the topic. He's like, hey, if you win a match there, like $100 for every match you win, or something like. Actually, I think it was $1,000 for every match you win, or something outrageous. That so I just gotta go. I gotta win a match. We gotta see what the brackets look like. We gotta get me maybe a subpar D3 guy who's just fresh off the scale.
Would you agree as a financial planner that Dave Cloninger's money's pretty safe where it is right now?
It's pretty safe. I don't think there's an upside bet unless he's get something out of. It's not all about money. I think that if he gets a little happiness or whatever about seeing Brian get rolled, then it might be worth the bet. But otherwise, not making any money on it. But I would match. I'd put $1,000 to the Army Wrestling Club for every match that Brian Rowan wins. You know, $10, $1. I think we could raise a few $1,000 for Army Wrestling by getting Brian to the tournament. So I'm down.
If I can win a match. You guys don't have a lot of faith. I think I can win a match.
Oh,
Has Matt Kyler ever taken you down?
No, he hasn't. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, just wanted to get it on record. Matt Kyler has never taken Brian Rowan down. So
for the listeners out there, there's we have a group text going around, and I'll bring that up in the group text with Matt pretty routinely because he'll talk some smack. So, but for the record, he has never taken me down.
I also got the record for most like nights in the hotel with Matt because I was the only one that would room with him. I don't know if that's supposed to go on the show.
Jordan will have to edit that part out.
I love Matt. We all love Matt. Come on, dude. Matt's an All-American.
No, I know. This is we're getting off topic now. So so you transition out. You had a stint in Hawaii. Were you in financial services in Hawaii, or how did your transition work, and how did you end up in financial services out of the Army?
So I was a client initially, and it was because an alum worked with the company. Actually, an Army wrestler married another cadet whose brother and father worked for the company I work for now. And I had been a client because of that introduction. And when I was transitioning out, it was my practice. Who was it?
Yeah, if you can say.
It's Dan Shearing. Dan Shearing married Kelly Robbins, and then your classmate. Your classmate.
I have not heard that name
in a while. Yeah, right. But no, Matt, Martin Robbins.
Yeah, Marty.
You know
Marty.
Marty?
Yeah.
Marty was my original advisor. And just talked to me. I wanted to move to Hawaii. I didn't set out to be in financial services. I actually wanted to surf. I wanted to go to the North Shore of Hawaii and test myself there. I talked about facing challenges that you're afraid of. I got a C- in survival swimming, and I reacted to that by spending the next 15 years surfing and moving to Hawaii so I could surf North Shore. So that's why I ended up at First Command, is because I needed to make enough money and earn a living where I could support my lifestyle. And then also, I think when I do have a family, give them just a little more opportunity than I was given, and I was given a lot. So I wanted to make sure my career and my personal objectives were going to match up. And I think I found a calling in that. With the transition, I think Christian Snook, I'd be remiss to not mention him. And this is the beauty of the Army Wrestling alum, is he actually is also an advisor for First Command out of Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
He's my advisor.
He is. So we at least got one member here. We got one client here. But I called Christian after talking to Marty and told him I was thinking about it. I wanted his perspective. And he was really, really honest with me about his journey. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that he wouldn't want to work for any other company, and that it's his choice to work for First Command. And financial services is a wasteland, and absolutely deserves the reputation it typically has. But I think we're different, and we have a pretty noble mission of coaching those who serve in their pursuit of financial security. And that requires us to be great listeners and great communicators. And it's a different approach. It's a disciplined approach to financial planning, which really is appropriate for the majority of people who aren't already wealthy. It's about living on less than you earn, paying yourself first, and avoiding high interest rate debt. I don't want to get too into it, but I think a lot of what we do now represents the toughness and grit that is in wrestling. It's not the same. It's funny. I feel that way about golf too. And I would have called golf a game and not a sport as a kid. And all these things that wrestling taught me, I bring over into real life, and I see parallels about who gets to be successful financially and who doesn't. And it's not what you think. It really is not what you think. The people that are all glamorous, I don't want to talk about the $100 million we have multiple, but under management, but the people that are really successful are the ones that are humble, the ones that work hard, the ones that live, that save, and that have people they want to take care of. And they do that by taking care of themselves. And it doesn't happen overnight. There's no magic trick. So I've had to learn a lot and grow a lot as a person. And it's funny to say, you don't know what you don't know. When I left Alaska, I went to prep school and then West Point and then the Army. And then it's like every 5 years, I've got another crucible, but I've got to learn and become a better person from it. And I'm being challenged now. I'm a district advisor now. So I've got people that are advisors that are much more accomplished than me. I've got 275-plus-year-olds. One of them was the Alpha Company 159th commander in Vietnam before the 160th Division was even created. I learned from him every day. And then I got Walt Coulter. I'll throw some names out. I gotta talk to my marketing department. Walt, very regulated industry. Walt was one of the first Black Hawk maintainers when that airframe was rolled out. So I get to be surrounded by the best parts of military culture across all branches. I get to have friendly banter. Our CEO, I used to introduce, he's the chairman of the board now. I'd say, unfortunately, he's a Naval Academy graduate, right? And give a little bit of credibility, but funny stuff. Like an advisor, Eric Schuster, 92 or 97 grad, he got a boat and drug it over to the CEO's house in Fort Worth, Texas, and like burned it in his driveway. So, but I don't got to wake up and go to PT. Now I do. Now I'm getting older. You got to go to PT. It's funny getting older. But I'm like more brutal now than I was when I was in the Army because I miss it sometimes. But still don't got to sign out on leave. I miss that. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And I think you just have to have a growth mindset. And I think wrestling prepares you for that, is that no matter how tough you are, there's someone else out there that's got your number. So you need to keep training. And if it ain't raining, we ain't training. I don't know how that thing goes.
So when you moved back to Alaska, as a single early to mid 30s, successful guy, what outdoor toys would you recommend, or what was essential, for your, when you got back there?
Oh man, speaking of the ruralness, dude, all of them. I actually made a goal. I've had different goals that are a little unconventional. I made a goal moving back to Alaska to not get into flying. I'm slowly failing at it. I could see a place in maybe 2 or 3 years where I'm trying to get my private pilot's license and go deeper into the wilderness, because wrestling taught me this, working with the cannery taught me this. You don't know who you are, you don't know who someone is until they're hungry and tired. I don't want to talk about Whit Dunning right now, but Army wrestler doesn't take cutting weight the best. But man, everything right now, I'm kind of getting into rock climbing. Alaska's probably not the best place to do it, but I got to trick myself to working out. I don't like just lifting weights. Chandler Smith, I'll leave that to him.
CrossFit, where it's at.
You're a CrossFit monster too, but you got those short shorts, you got the tan, you got the community. You're the real thing. And I love CrossFit, and that's a different topic. I just don't do it. So I'm backcountry snowboarding. I think surfing gave me a different perspective on the elements and the conditions and being part of your environment. And if you don't take snow consistency and weather patterns into consideration, you'll die. So, and that's a period. I'll just put a period on that. You will die a terrible death, buried in snow.
No one will find you.
No one will. Well, they might find you. They got to find you in 5 minutes. They don't dig you out in 5 minutes. So that's man, it's just fun getting in the mountains. Talked about Nikiski and what the big city Anchorage is like. I really thought as the city, and what I would remember about Anchorage is coming up the highway and there being an overpass. And when you go underneath it, now we're in the city. Now I look around and we're surrounded by mountains and water. I literally, some of the pictures I take that people are like, oh, where are you on the moon? Dude, I'm like 20 minutes from my house. I'm like, this is just how we do it here. I was on the golf course the other day. A big black bear walked out in front of me. I still golf. People are like, how are you going to golf in Alaska? Isn't it? Aren't you always in your igloo? Nah, dude, it's pretty fun to start around at 7 p.m. and finish at 11:30 at p.m. at night and be golfing after work and finish your round. So the number one thing that I'm trying to be good at in my quest to be as tough as I can be is sheep hunting. I went on my first sheep hunt last year. That is gnarly. There's no trail. You're carrying 55 pounds up the mountain. You're doing 10 miles a day. And I'll tell you the equipment I have now from Kuyu. See if they'll sponsor this. They might. They make some good stuff. You're dry, you're warm, easy transitions. It's light. But then you got to carry 98 pounds. I'm still $140, carrying 98 pounds on my back, 6 miles out of a mountain. It's pretty.
You made it to the infantry.
Yeah, I did, and that's why I'm like, man, why do I like this shit? Excuse me, why do I like this stuff?
Sorry, Matthew Simpson.
You gotta believe it stuff. Why do I like this stuff so much now? And I probably missed my opportunity. But it's a little different when you're on your own schedule. Whatever. Like I said, I'll be there when the time comes and I'll be trained. So sheep hunting, there's no shortage of things that you can get into here if you're adventurous enough, and it is scaling to the degree where you can't possibly reach the end. And that to me, man, if it's not apparent, I'm stoked. And leaving Alaska at 17 years old, I never anticipated being back here in 15 years in my journey through the Army, through West Point, and then my stint in Hawaii. I'm back home, and I'm stoked to be here. So just trying to take small bites on purpose, because man, you will get lost and your wallet will feel it. So whatever you want to do. Snow machines pretty good. Those are snowmobiles. For everyone else, we call them snow machines. Oh, dude, there's so much cool stuff. I could go all day.
Dude, I need to come out there. I need to come out there like September.
I want to get an Army wrestling camp out here. Kevin Ward, I don't know if you guys know this. He's an avid bow hunter. He gets out to Colorado and he wants to elk hunt. And it's open invitation. It's open invitation. I think we could get a camp out here, get some people out here, and
you heard it, Kevin.
Onions. So
you're on notice.
We'll to remind, it's recruiting season.
I don't know, man. Those Colorado mountains. Sorry, I know those mountains. He goes around. Those are little mountains, though. So another level up here.
Before we let you go, I think we got a record number of questions for you.
Really? Oh wow.
I don't know. Actually, Hunter got a bunch of questions last week, but I apologize. I was in a hurry, and I actually got some flack from Tyler McLeese. He's like, "What are you, big tech? You're censoring my question." That was actually what he said. So I got to make sure I get through all the listener questions. Actually, there was like 6. There weren't like a super amount, but one was what?
Sorry, I'm just gonna assume most of the questions were girls. For Garrett, you know that guy. He's trapping. So.
So one actually brought up one topic that we didn't bring up. Ty, I don't know if you knew this. Lance was Buckner Squad Leader of the Year, or Squad Leader of the
Best Squad Leader.
Best Squad Leader.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
That's
Sam
impressive.
Ruda asked, and he didn't even know this. He said, "Any CFT advice for a rising yearling this summer?"
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Man, the legacy of the best squad leader is alive a decade later. That's news to me. What? Dude, I think this goes for everything is you do your best. I mean, land navigation, give me a lot of stuff like shooting. I did all that stuff as a kid, so that stuff wasn't new to me. It's learning to lead as a peer. That is tough. And man, sometimes you just got to tell people what's up in this way. Hey, I'm in the position I'm in right now, and the mission dictates we do this. It'll be a lot easier if we all collaborate, especially when you're in the position. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. So it's reciprocal leadership. And so peer leadership is challenging, but I just talked real with the cadets 1 year younger than me, like that rank actually matters. Sorry, cadets, but you got to go deeper with how you're going to lead people. And then this is the real takeaway I had from that is there was probably a week left out of spending 7 weeks. I spent so much time at Buckner. At the end of that, I realized I was probably gonna win. And then the thought I had was, well, the only way you'll do that is if you don't focus on winning and you just keep doing what you're doing. And so that's my advice is just do your best and keep doing what you're doing. And then you get 4 responses, and the only one you'll use at Buckner and cadet training is no excuse. At some point, if you know something's right and the perspective from your leaders is wrong, you got to stand up for your team, and they will follow you. And I remember I had to do that a lot in the Army. I've had to do it in my professional life, and I remember doing that as a cadet. So just have an open mind and learn and treat people the way you want to be treated. That's it.
So
Man, that was the only serious listener question we got. Well, I say serious as in like the serious tone. The other questions were just as serious, but are a little lighter in content.
Okay.
So these next 2 are golf related, not from the same person, but coming from Rudy Chalednik. Is Lance the best golfer of the Army wrestling alumni? We kind of already addressed it, but
I like to think the golfer who's having the most fun is the best golfer. So yes is the correct answer. Christian is a little better than me by a lot. He's a little better than me by a lot. And that's really what I love about it, man. If you think you are going to be super good at golf right away, or you're great because you can hit 1 shot, just like in wrestling, you better quit because you're not going to have any fun. So you got to embrace the suck. And I know Brian's getting into golf. Just enjoy that golf is difficult and celebrate the small wins. So no, I'm not. Christian Snook is by far the best golfer.
Part 2. This is actually coming from Patrick Smith, 2011 graduate. What's your handicap?
So formerly, it was like 18, got down to 12 last year. I shot 2 rounds in a row, 79 this week. So I haven't kept a handicap in a while, but it's around 12 still probably. But I think based on how I'm hitting it, I think I'm gonna, no, not I think. Let's positive affirm this. I will break 80 multiple times this year, and I will be a single-digit handicap, which is my current goal.
Boom.
Boom.
good stuff.
Next question. Your favorite warm-up track? Shinedown's Sound of Madness or MIA Paper Planes?
Oh man, those are the only 3 songs that ever played in the wrestling room. And courtesy of Whit Dunning, we played that one other techno song, but I mean, throwback to Rudy like Paper Planes. Can I pick none of the above?
You can.
I mean, no. If I have to pick those, Paper Planes.
Okay, this isn't really a question, but Patrick Smith wrote the acronym INA. I'll just leave it at that.
We'll talk it over breakfast.
We'll talk it over breakfast. Okay. Last question from Rudy again. If Tony Hawk asked you to do an ollie, would you win a skateboard? I don't even get that.
Oh, I would, dude. I'd do a switch ollie. What are you talking about? Of course, I'm gonna do an ollie. If Tony Hawk talked to me, I don't know if I would be composed enough to do an ollie, but I would suck it up and get mentally focused wrestling time. Man, I would hit that ollie and then I'd shake his hand. That's what I'd do.
That's all the real listener questions. There's a couple other responses.
That's all the serious ones.
Yeah.
Brian, I got to land this plane, buddy.
All right. So before we go, who do you want to hear on the show next, Lance? You got to call somebody out. Who do you want to hear?
You know, I was talking about Frankie Bond. I think that I would love to hear from Frankie Bond if we could get a hold of him. Certain Rudy's been on the show.
Rudy is not.
Man, that's who I thought about when you asked that question, just because he's somebody that showed me a ton of care when I got there. Man, I wish I was a little bit more prepared. I love listening to what any of my brothers are doing. Think a little bit more on that, who's doing great stuff. for Army wrestling.
We'll
But-
put that in. Well,
That's-
Lance, appreciate you hopping on. I know Ty's got to get home, probably cook some dinner, get the wife ready for be on the news tomorrow or tonight. But
I do.
Actually, has Casey Tom, like I'd be terrible. I know Jordan's running it, but Casey's transition from the Army to the Coast Guard, I think is pretty interesting.
yeah, we had Casey on.
Yeah.
We had
I don't know if he
Casey on,
talked
and
about that.
I surprised had his dad on too. That was like my.
I remember that. I was just thinking, I'm just so happy for him and what he's doing and the family that he has. And I'm stoked for him. I gotta probably keep up a little bit better. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lance, appreciate you coming on. It was a fun time.
Lance, great seeing you, man. Great catching up.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate all the support and the teamwork. This is great. And I'm excited for where Army Wrestling goes in the future.
Absolutely.
Be Navy.
BHAW.
Yeehaw. Hey, open invitation to Alaska. That goes for every single person that is affiliated with Army Wrestling. You let me know. We'll show you a good time.
There we go. It's out there.
That's the truth. It's the truth. Most people will take me up on that.
See you, fellas.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.